I'm going to go ahead and start with just a brief introduction of who our host is today. This is Shirley Yu. Am I pronouncing that correctly, Shirley?
Yeah.
Okay, great. She is the pastor of special needs at Metro Community Church in Englewood, New Jersey. She's a certified special education teacher there and has taught in the public school system at Bergen County Special Services. She's also served as a chaplain at the ARC of Bergen and Passaic counties with adults that are living with disabilities. And her passion is to serve individuals and families who are differently able so that they can thrive in the community while connecting them to the larger church. She also values learning and growing together in relationship. She's developed a core team of leaders and as well as a team of volunteers that call themselves buddies who support individuals and families. And she's big on education and believes we can all start by growing in knowledge together. The title of her workshop is Embracing the Differently Abled in Church Community. So thank you, Shirley, for making time to come share your thoughts with us today. We're anxious to hear what you have to share. You were my first pick as far as a workshop to host, so I was glad that I lucked out on that. And I'll hand it over to you. If you have questions, go ahead and type that in the chat down at the bottom, and I'll be feeding those to Shirley at the right time. We'll go till the top of the hour and leave the last 15 minutes for questions. All right, Shirley, it's yours.
Thank you, Sammy. Thank you so much, everybody who's come out today. I don't know how it is where you are, but it is a beautiful sunny day here in New Jersey. But thankful that everybody could take time for us because, to be honest, for me, the fact that you're here today, it gives me hope. It really gives me hope that the church will arise in becoming more of an intentionally, differentially able church body. So welcome. So first I want to ask you a few questions. Have you noticed barriers in the church between those who are differentially abled with the rest of the church community? Is there a way to bridge the gap of these barriers to reflect the kingdom of God while meeting the individual's special needs? The answer, in my experience, is yes. Today, I will be sharing what we have done at Metro Community Church to help you brainstorm ideas of how to do so at your own church or community as we continue to beat the heart of God for his whole community. So first, start with listening. Meet with at least one family and listen to their story. What they really want is they want to be seen and heard. So at our church, what we started, it always starts with at least one family, right? We had our first family who came out and they had two children who was on the autism spectrum disorder. And they, I introduced myself to her, we got to know each other. And I asked her, I was like, can we get together one day? I would love to hear your story. And she was elated. And she was like, yes, please. And she invited me over to her house. And so I went over and I brought dessert and she just shared her story with me. And it wound up being like hours, And what I realized was, she just really wants to be seen and heard. Yes, for her two kids, but just even as a family. And so I think the fact that we just had that time together made such a big difference just to even listen to their story. And I find that listening is very, very important because no matter how many families come through our doors as a church or as a community, the thing that I'm constantly reminded of is that each person's story is individualized. It could be a lot of things can be very in common with other families, but a lot of things could also be very different, even if they have the same disability. So listening to their stories will help us to really focus on the individual, focus on their individual families, and be able to build relationships and break down those barriers together. Um, Two, raise awareness with a vision of inclusion. So, with the second point about raising awareness, and with talking about inclusion, is share the family story. And of course, this has to be with their permission, right? So, I find that like when you're in church or in any kind of a speaking platform, people's stories really stand out. And I find that the people who are listening, if it's in the church, the congregation members, um, they pay a lot of attention to the stories, right? Because it hits somewhere where it hits us relationally, it hits us in the heart, it hits us in the mind, it hits us with just basic knowledge of each other. So I found that sharing a family story with their permission was very powerful for the rest of our church to listen and hear their story. So, one of the biggest ways that we've been able to do that is by having a special needs awareness Sunday. So, basically, what these Sundays were, it was a specific Sunday in the year, and we have this once every year. If you could have it more often, even better. But we have it once a year where, because I'm the special needs pastor, I would preach the sermon that day. But along with the sermon, I always had a story of at least one of our families to share. Now, some of the families are very shy, so they don't want to speak on stage, into a mic in front of everybody. So even there, we individualize it. So for those families, we did a video recording of them. So we had our video guy come, and I prepped the family up with some questions that I was going to ask them. We kind of did like an interview style, and they shared their story in that way. And so the first time we had our Special Needs Awareness Sunday, I was able to interview a few families, not just one. And just hearing their stories, it just brought things to life for the rest of our church community to really see life the way they do, and to see even their church community the way they do, because it is quite different from the way anybody else, the general population, does. And so these stories were really great to hear on our Special Needs Awareness Sundays. And every time we have it, we have a different family come and share. And it's a great way for the church community just to get to know them, right? And get to know them, and also to get to know their needs, but also of how they can lead us and how they can teach us, whether it be just through their child or as a whole family. So sharing their stories and their testimonies was very powerful in our church in bridging and breaking down those barriers. So another great thing about Special Needs Awareness Sundays is that it's a great platform to recruit volunteers. So I don't know about you, but it's a common church struggle to have enough volunteers. And so this is a great way to recruit volunteers, because again, as we're raising awareness, I think a lot of people do want to help, right? But they just don't know how. They don't know, they're insecure maybe of what they might do that could be good or what could not be right and things. So we start with special needs awareness by like just asking people to sign up just for more information. And when they sign up for more information, I tell them, like, I'll just share with you the information. We could get together, we could talk about it, and just kind of go from there, right? So, one of the ways we do that is also by starting with observations, right? So, I always tell people it's a no obligation observation, right? So they come to um, just observe, just hang out with us on a Sunday, see what we do, and then so there's no pressure, right? But more often than not, when they come and they observe, they want to get involved, you know. But there were times when there were people who came and were like, oh, I don't feel equipped to do this, even with training. So at that point, then they wind up being helpers that help us just like once a year or once a quarter, or with background events, and helping us set events up in the background. So recruiting volunteers on Special Needs Awareness Sundays has been very helpful for us. The other thing about raising awareness with a vision of inclusion is speaking to respective student ministries and their leaders. So at our church, we have ministries from birth through college. And basically what we do is, because our students are not, our students are all in their own respective age groups, right? We're all by inclusion. So we don't have like a separate Sunday service just for our special needs friends. They're all in their age groups with their peers, but with their peers with help, right? So, but before these families came to our church, I would initially meet with the family first, get to know their child, their family, and then I asked the parents for permission if I could share information about their child to their peer group at our church, just to prepare them, right? So when I do that, I start with meeting with the ministry leader, let them know, okay, hey, so we're gonna have John come to our church starting in a month or however long it's going to be. And, I just tell them about the student with their disability and who their buddy's going to be. And then we, go from there. And I just always let them know, that, hey, if you ever have any questions or any problems, I'm always here, and we're always going to be here, right? So there's no anxiety or anything like that. So that really helps in bridging that gap, right? So we coordinate with the leaders and make sure that we are available with them. And then we train and share resources, right? So what I did was I went around to each student ministry level, and I did a Special Needs Awareness Sunday at each level. So one with the elementary school kids, one with the high school kids, the middle school kids. And so that way it's age appropriate too. And I basically like shared YouTube clips on what autism is, what's Down syndrome, what is ADHD, what is ADD. And so it helps the kids to all understand what these disabilities are, because they've seen different kids in their context, whether it be church or school or wherever, but they are not necessarily taught with what these specific disabilities are, right? And why certain people act certain ways, right? So that's when I took that opportunity to train them and show them and teach them what these different disabilities are. And then I share with them specific information on that student who's going to be in that group with them, right? So for example, we had a student, I'm gonna say his name is John. He came, I met with his family at their house, met with him in advance and got to know him, and was able to get the parents' permission to share with the things that he likes to do, things that he doesn't like, and how he acts in general, to kind of prepare the general youth group students, so that when he comes, they're not like, whoa, like, and it helps to kind of break down those barriers of intimidation, of not wanting to interact with him. So I was able to share pictures of John with the youth group so they know what he looks like for his first day when he comes. I got to share with them of how he likes to jump a lot, and so don't get too intimidated if he jumps, and if he comes really close to you, it's because he's very excited, and he just doesn't hide his excitement. A lot of us, because of our insecurities or our because of our self-esteem, we're embarrassed to share our excitement sometimes, right? Well, John is not, he's not embarrassed. He has no fear of that. So he's going to be very open and free about sharing his excitement. So he's going to jump around a lot, he might make some noises, like things like that. So, kind of give them a heads up and train them in that way. So it was really beautiful, actually. So the first Sunday when he came to church, Oh, I also gave them some information of like that he doesn't like a lot of loud noises and that he really responds well to high fives, right? So that first Sunday when John came to our church, so many of the youth group kids came up and were like, "Hey, John, high five!" And they gave him high fives, and he felt so welcomed. And his parents, when they saw that, they were brought to tears because they were so thankful that there was a church community that was so welcoming to their son, that wasn't weirded out, that didn't draw a barrier even more, right? To stand away from him and not welcome him. So we were very thankful for that great interaction. I was so proud of our youth group kids with that too. So definitely having these times to train and to share specifics about a child, it really, really helps in breaking down those barriers. 3, finds commonality to fellowship together. So bridge gaps with baby steps, right? As I mentioned earlier, just start with saying hello, right? Encourage as I walk around with our friends who are differentially abled, I encourage them to stop and say, "John, hey, you want to say hi to Lauren?" And then he'll wave, or if he's able to be a little verbal, he'll say hi, and then it draws Lauren in as well as those other kids who's around Lauren to recognize that John is there and to recognize the fact that they can say hi and that John will respond, and sometimes John may need prompts, but that he will respond. So start with baby steps with even saying hello, and then share interests and draw our commonalities to enjoy together. So obviously there are differences, right? There are a lot of differences that's seen right off the bat, but there are a lot of things in common too. So for example, that student I mentioned to you about, John, he's very athletic. So he's really good at basketball, volleyball, things like that. So sometimes in our church gym, if people are playing basketball, I'm like, "Oh my goodness, John loves basketball." And then they'll be like, "Oh, really?" So I'm like, "John, you want to play basketball with us?" So it was great that they invited him, and he felt that, and his family saw that, and we're so touched by that. And granted, he didn't really know how to play the whole game, but the fact that they welcomed him in the beginning and they would try to help him in between here and there, that opened and that bridged huge gaps in just that interaction there, just with that commonality of enjoying basketball together, right? So draw out the commonalities and also ask special needs families to contribute. So I know that a lot of times we think we have to help them, And yes, they do need help and support, but a lot of ways they want to help. They want to contribute, and it empowers them to do so too. So for example, we had another family, and the son, he has autism as well, and but he's very high functioning. He can speak well and things, but he has a lot of social anxiety. So his father, I was talking to his father, and I was like, how can we get him to get involved with the youth group, because he wasn't really wanting to come out to church. So the father offered to have kids come to his house. And so we're like, great, that sounds great. So we're like, how about this? So me and the youth pastor, we got together and we're like, the youth pastor ordered pizza for the kids and invited kids to come out. And they had a movie night at their house. They got to watch a movie together. And it was a great way to get to know the student and his family as well. So part of me, to be honest, felt bad. I was like, oh my gosh, like, shouldn't we be inviting them to our houses, But I realized we don't need to feel bad. The father was so excited to have these kids and to have people at their house with his son. So ask special needs families to contribute. Another way is to invite to respite events. So our church, we have something called respite events where families can drop off their kids and for 3 hours and just go to either run errands or go home and sleep or whatever, have a date night if they're married, like things like that. And they drop off their kids to this respite event. And not just their child with special needs, but all of their kids, right? So that's what we've done. And it's great. The kids get to come, just hang out. We've had like magic shows, we've had karaoke, we've had crafts, baking, all the different stuff we've done. And the kids have a great time because it's not just for the special needs friends, but it's also for their siblings to be seen and known and have fun too, right? And also that they don't have to be the one to always keep an eye on their sibling, that there's other people here with them too. So respite events has been great. But in a way to bridge gaps with the respite events is by inviting other single parent families. So this way, the single parent families' kids can also interact with our special needs friends and their siblings and kind of start bridging some gaps that way too. And who doesn't like to have fun, right? Everybody just comes, everybody hangs out, and they get to just enjoy time together and get to know each other. And then when they see each other on a Sunday, they're like, hey, they recognize each other, hang out together a little bit more. And it's just a great opportunity to do so. Um, also, we've invited volunteers who volunteer for the respite event to bring their own family members, right? So a lot of times they wind up coming, signing up to come to help, but it actually winds up being an opportunity to bridge gaps so that they too can develop the relationships with our friends with special needs and their siblings too. So it's just a really great building relationship event. 4, train buddies. So, a great way to train buddies is through an organization called Johnny and Friends. And I know they were mentioned earlier I think in a plenary or something. And Johnny and Friends is a really great organization with a lot of training and a lot of resources out there. So definitely encourage you to look up Johnny and Friends and can get lots of materials from them. I think the key thing is to intentionally train for inclusion, right? So I know that there are churches that have separate ministries for special needs, but I just find that the more we go towards inclusion, I think it really is better for the whole church body because while it's great to focus just on our special needs friends, I believe that our special needs friends can transform the church by teaching the church how to be church and welcoming them and getting to know them and to even be like them with their joy, with their struggles, with all of our heart's desire to turn to God and acknowledging how much we need Jesus. So train for inclusion, and I do think that we have to be very intentional with inclusion. Another way to train buddies is by recruiting student buddies. So we encourage students that's in that same ministry age group. We encourage them to be a student buddy to that special needs friend. Because a lot of the times kids don't want to be with adults, right? They want to be with fellow peers, right? So it's a great way to have a student be a buddy there for them too, and therefore get their friends to become friends with our special needs friend too, right? And start bringing them in and welcome them and get to know them and things. But I will also say, if there's a student buddy, I think no matter even up through high school, it's always better to have adult supervision there too. So we pair up a student buddy with an adult buddy. So usually the student buddy can do the more active things like the running around and things like that. But the adult buddy is there so that if anything was to happen or, just for safety reasons in particular, the adult is there to supervise and make sure everybody is well. So that's part of training buddies. 5, remember that this is all a process, right? And any process all takes time. So, breaking down barriers takes time. So hope that you can be patient with yourself, patient with your church, and even patient with the families, right? Because sometimes the families, it could be hard for them to kind of come out and seek help and even find that they can themselves help the church as well. So just honor the process and taking its time, and really go for it one person or one family at a time. So an example I would like to share is one of our pastors of one of the student ministries at our church. He remembered a lot of the points that was shared in the trainings. So recently he shared with me of how um, there was an incident where this one student who was new to the church saw one of our special needs friends, right? And he referred to him as the crazy one, right? So this pastor right away stopped the lesson when that kid said that. And he called him. I was like, you come out, see me in the hallway. And the kid was like, what? So he called him out into the hallway and he asked him, why did you call him a crazy kid? And the kid was like, because he is crazy. And so the one point that this pastor remembered in one of our trainings was that even if the child with special needs doesn't respond to you, they can still hear and feel everything. So if this kid called our friend crazy, he hears it. He may not have acknowledged it to you that he heard you by looking at you and giving you a look, but he can hear it and he can feel it. So that is not what we do at our church. That is not what we do, because he is a child of God as well, just like you. And instead, what we do is we welcome him and we embrace him. So it was such a great way that this pastor, who's heard these trainings for years now, that it clicked in his mind. And then he was able to share that with this kid. And this kid will hopefully be able to share this experience, because he said that this was his first experience with anyone with special needs who was differentially abled. So now we hope that with him too, he'll be able to now think differently with our differentially abled friends. So one person, one family at a time. And stay connected with other leaders to keep you going. So, ways that I've been able to stay connected and keep me going is the North Jersey Disability Leaders Network with Sib Charles, who is from Johnny and Friends. So again, Johnny and Friends is just a really great resource that can keep you connected and can keep training you and building you up in this ministry. So want to end with this passage in 1 Corinthians chapter 12 with these verses. Just as a body, though one, has many parts, but all its many parts form one body, so it is with Christ. The eye cannot say to the hand, I don't need you. And the head cannot say to the feet, I don't need you. On the contrary, those parts of the body that seem to be weaker are indispensable. And the parts that we think are less honorable, we treat with special honor. And the parts that are unpresentable are treated with special modesty, while our presentable parts need no special treatment. But God has put the body together, giving greater honor to the parts that lacked it, so that there should be no division in the body, but that its parts should have equal concern for each other. So I pray that today's workshop was helpful to maybe at least get some ideas going in your mind in building a differentially abled church community. And in that way, be able to start with whatever God's calling you to do, but definitely by building those relationships with listening and with finding commonality, raising awareness, training, and just going through the process. So thank you. And I believe we will go into a time of Q&A.
That's right. Thank you, Shirley. I really appreciate it. If y'all want to turn on your cameras, that'd be great. We can see your faces and connect here, because I know we're all hungry for connection. And if you have any questions about what Shirley presented today, here's your chance. We've got about 12 minutes to discuss things and solve the world's problems, right? Would anyone like to go first? You can just unmute and ask, or if you prefer, you can type into the chat and I can read the question for you. Go ahead, Valerie.
I have kind of a comment just based on that last story about the kiddo calling the child with special needs crazy. I've worked with kids. I'm a speech and language pathologist, and I've done that for like 40 years. And one of the things I've learned is that sometimes children are not aware that what they're saying is offensive. They're just making a remark like they would say to any other friend, like, he's crazy. Now, it sounds like not in this case, of course, but I guess I just wanted to throw that in, that sometimes children will say things about their friends with special needs and not realize that it's derogatory, but just think they're having fun. So it's such a great learning opportunity for them, and for them to see us respond with, oh, no, he's not crazy. What did you mean by that? Like, and kind of helping them understand a little bit. It's a good teaching moment. And it's really helpful. In my experience, it's been really helpful to make sure it's not sort of punitive if it was not intended to be disrespectful.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, Valerie. Thank you. When this pastor was sharing with me too, that was my thought too. I was like, oh gosh, I hope that kid didn't feel like, but the
Right.
way he described it to me, he's like, no, the kid was obnoxious.
Yeah, and that certainly happens too. So I
Yeah.
didn't mean to like diss your story, but it did make me think of those times when kids have said something and they've been then mortified that was a negative, but I just think it's been really helpful then to be able to talk to them about that. Well, I know you meant it this way, but the person hearing that might think that you think whatever. So, and it just builds capacity for those children to be thinking about what it's like to be a child with special needs. So
yeah, that's another way to bridge that gap, right? To kind of talk about that, to be aware and things. And yeah, and just to kind of add in there that story with this pastor, he did end it well with the kid, because the kid he started crying actually in the beginning because he was called out, and he was like, oh, so, but it ended well in that, it was a conversation. It wasn't just a reprimand. It was a conversation, and the kid at the end of it was like, I've never interacted with someone with special needs before. So so the pastor empowered him to say, okay, well, I'm glad that you met our friend today. And now you can know, and you can now interact a little bit better, and engage with them more now, and teach your other friends now too.
Yeah.
So it ended well in that way, but it is a great way to open conversation, to discuss words that just come out however way.
Yeah, it's very powerful. Thanks for your presentation, by the way.
Thank you.
I've done a lot of work with NAMI, National Alliance on Mental Illness, and so it's a discussion in our home to try not to use those words that only continue to feed stigma about things like mental illness or disabilities, because people just sometimes don't even know this is just part of words that you've said all of your life, and you don't even think about how they might affect another person. So
yeah, so to that pastor, something that he told me that he never realized was, like, when I had mentioned in a training, like, even if if you don't, when you say hi to them, they can feel it, even if they don't respond, right? They can feel it. So if they can feel when you say hi to them, they could also feel when you don't say hi to them. They could also feel the unwelcome. And this pastor specifically said, wow, I never pieced that together before, right? So this is why I realized, like, training is so important, because to us, it might seem so obvious, but not always. and it's great to have that awareness, raising that awareness, and just talking about things that seem like common sense, but it's not necessarily.
Hi. I've worked with deaf and hard of hearing people as a career and in ministry. And I wanted to give a little pushback that why is there a special needs awareness Sunday once a year? Why isn't it every Sunday? Or why isn't it people with special needs are a part of the ministry, a part of the church service, being singled out for one Sunday a year is kind of objectifying people with special needs.
Hmm. Well, thank you, Kim, for your open and honest feedback, because you're absolutely right. It should be every Sunday. And we don't want to objectify anybody ever, right? And so in that way, I'm thankful for the relationship that we have. And being the special needs pastor, I'm very thankful for the relationship that I have personally with our special needs families at our church. And so I'm always checking in with them. I never do or say anything without their permission. And they have told me that they're very thankful for the platform that's given to them to be able to share their stories and to be able to be seen and heard by the whole church community. Because unfortunately, their experience was people would see them, people would see their child and know that their child is different, but they don't know how to respond. So they just kind of turn away and just kind of walk in the other direction. So for them, they're thankful to be able to have this platform where we're openly talking about, the differences, but with a Christ-centered message of, yeah, we may be different, but we're all different. It's just a matter of bridging those gaps together, right? So yeah, ideally, it would be great to do this every Sunday, and that's our goal, right? That's our goal. But our church, at least our church, we were not there. So we are kind of like meeting each other where each other is at. Like our church community just was not there yet. So we're starting with this. But after starting with Special Needs Awareness Sunday, we've been able to do more and more often without having to specifically even mention special needs, right? And just kind of bridging the gaps. So that's what we've been working through. But it's good to be aware though, right? To make sure that we're not objectifying anybody. And just it'd be nice if we don't have to be so intentional, but
Yeah.
that's where our church is right now.
I think it's
Kind
one
of
of
where our
those.
society is right now.
Go
Yeah.
ahead. I think it's a both and in that, we do want to support by calling people forth and talking about something that we're all learning and growing in. But I see what you're saying, Kim, like we wouldn't have a Black Awareness Day, or Black Awareness Sunday. We wouldn't do that, right? That would be offensive in a sense, kind of like what you were saying. But at the same time, we do have a, Youth Ministry Awareness Day, right? To talk about our high school students. And we have women's ministry. So it's kind of a both and, but I love what you shared there, Shirley, about how it was a place to start and that it's opened other doors. And I think that really dovetails well with the way that Christ meets us where we are and calls us forward to grow in our understanding of how to love others well. I'm wondering too if it's influenced how your pastor refers to populations or within the congregation, because a lot of times they'll say, singles, married, young adults, that they don't ever throw in, or a lot of times we use the word diversity and we talk about race and gender and sexual orientation, but we don't ever throw the word disability or ability level into that word as far as when we're talking about diversity. So it's good to see that it's slowly creating change within your community. Thank you. Anybody else have any questions, comments?
I have a question, and I may have missed it. Missed something because my computer keeps freezing. So I wanted to know, in what ways do you ask special needs families to contribute? And are we allowing parents of children with special needs to have that time away, to have their own worship time away from having to manage the care for their child?
Yeah, we do. So while we have inclusive ministries where the students are in their respective age groups with their peers, we do have like a therapy room in because our church, we rent the school. And so we have a therapy room within the school, which is, yeah, a real great positive thing for us. So when the room gets a little too overwhelming, like sometimes like during the praise, it gets a little too loud for them. So then we encourage them to be able to let us know, whether it be verbally or through their communication device, like, I want to go for a walk or go to the therapy room. So it's like their time away to be able to kind of have their time for themselves. If they need the weighted blanket, or if they need some like pressure and things like that, then that's the space where they can get that for themselves. But always the goal is to kind of like bring them back. But if that's where they're more comfortable with, then we'll encourage other students to join us sometimes during their small group time and have small group time with us in the therapy room, you know? So that's how we try to kind of work through those things as well. Did that answer your question, Amy?
I think so. Yeah, I just know that sometimes when you're dealing with a child with special needs, I had a son who had oppositional defiant disorder, and at school he wasn't so bad, but at home he'd be very aggressive and violent, and I wouldn't want to have to go to his classroom to make sure that, you know, fortunately when he was around other people he wasn't nearly as bad as he was just at home alone with us. But I would want to be able to worship and learn in the service without having to go to a classroom to make sure that he is okay and doing what he needs to do. So I want to make sure that parents are getting that as well to work on their own spiritual health. So I think I answered it, but yeah, I'm one who carries earplugs with me everywhere because every once in a while sound is like painful. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, this is what we're doing today. Earplugs in.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's where I try to encourage like our buddies, like just pay attention to what your child or what your student is thinking or feeling. Like if they start, you know, banging their head, right? Just pay attention, like maybe it's because things are too loud for them, right? So just ask them, do you want to step out? You want to go to the therapy room? You know, and then like they'll let them know if they need to or not. But also just kind of encouraging them to like even ask other kids around them to like offer help, not so it's just always on the buddy, you know, but also bringing people into their struggles also.
Well, thank you, everybody. We're at our time. You've got about 10 minutes now until the plenary starts. So Amy or Shirley, thank you so much for sharing your story, what's worked for you and how you're doing things in your neck of the woods. There will be an evaluation that comes out after the webinar is over. So feel free to put in any additional information or questions that you've got for Shirley in that, and they can follow up with you. If you'd like to continue to meet online, I'd suggest that you also throw that request in there as well, so we can all start collaborating together. And I'll go ahead and just close this out in prayer real quick, and then we can go. So Lord, thank you for this time, for the words that you gave Shirley to share with us around how you've called her into ministry in her community. I pray that we can take those ideas and plant those seeds in the communities that we live in. And we ask for your blessing on that, that you would continue to grow awareness around the needs of young adults and individuals and families that live with special needs. We ask all these things in Christ's name. Amen. Thanks everybody for your time, and we'll see you at the plenary. So
thank you.
bye.